Like the basic tools I use are like a glue gun and a Dremel, and
I only use a scalpel.
I really love using scissors.
I've got a knife that has a blade that rotates.
Scalpels. Yeah, just regular scalpels that you'd see in an art shop, you know, with the metal handle.
My first experience with paper cutting was at the Leeds College of Art. I started using stencils as artwork. It was after a trip to Berlin. I was inspired by some of the stencil graffiti that I saw there.
started working, it's always been photographs and photographic images, so I started working with those. I guess the last year of my BA, I started working with photographs that I was taking, and it was very much like I often don't think of these things as being paper, you know, per se, because to me it's the image that's the important bit, but at the same time it is that the paper is their means of getting here.
I've always worked with paper. I think paper is probably like the first thing that everybody works with. I sort of started like collecting paper, and I'd have like a big bag with caddy papers and handmade papers and bits of magazines.
I came to working with paper through my love of books. So when I was doing my degree course, I was making a lot of my own books, and then gradually I started to use existing books and to start cutting them up and changing them. So my relationship with paper really comes out of my relationship with books.
I think why I first started moving into paper cuts was because I wanted to have a break from putting words in my work. I felt as if I want to see if I can tell stories without words.
I really love making things by hand. It's really important to me not to use machinery, or to use machinery in a way that brings out the human element of that use.
I don't like to produce work on my computer because I can't really engage with what I'm doing on the computer. I don't really feel, I don't feel like I'm part of what I'm doing. It feels disconnected.
It is paper, obviously, but I don't really think of it as paper, so I guess that leads to a different way of working with it in some ways, Everyone has their different obsessions and criteria, basically.
The idea of my use of working from paper is there is no depth particularly. It's silhouette based. There's very little perspective, there's no shade, there's no tone, there's no real depth of field. And by reducing, it's almost like you're pressing everything through a roller and it all comes out equal.
All the weapon sculptures, a really important thing about them is that they're hollow, so they're just made from 2 layers of banknote. It's about the illusion of power, so that it looks like something, but it's not. That belief, that's what gives the power its power.
The work I'm putting into the exhibition it's a large-scale installation piece. I've taken inspiration from the Hubble Space Telescope photography. It takes these amazing photographs of deep space, of nebulas sort of suspended in space. That sort of sculptural form and that energy that you can see in the photographs into a sculptural object.
We're going to be showing this motorbike piece and this figure piece. This motorbike piece is from 2010, but I'm actually kind of altering it a little bit, updating it a little bit. And the figure piece is made from a paper model of an anatomical skeleton. It's kind of a loose portrait of Elgin, because they have, in Manchester Art Gallery, they have these replicas of Elgin marbles around the atrium. So I sort of took that as the starting point for... So yeah, in this instance, it's actually really affected this particular piece.
This piece is called Sequel. A lot of my work is about time and change and the passage of time and history. Since January, I've been making thousands of oak leaves to attach to the tree. The oak leaves are all made out of reference books. Since the rise of the internet, we don't really need these books anymore. One part of this piece is thinking about the idea of a tree of knowledge. The story of this piece really is about the way that trees are grown, trees are cut down to make paper. Paper is then turned into books. The books are then turned into an artwork, and the thing that comes next is the thing that we're seeing now, which is the rise of the internet. And presumably someday the internet itself will make way for something else.
Now this picture that's next to me here is easily the biggest picture I've ever done, by about 100%. I just think I've tried to do one piece that is almost quite encompassing in its in its concept. It's just a majorly summing up of a lot of the themes that run through my work, and they are principally that it's much better to be alive than dead, and it's much better to have a good time than a bad time. So, I say a lot of these things in my work in small ways all the time, like, look at this leaf, isn't it beautiful? It's a miracle, And but what I'm really saying is, this leaf isn't a miracle. Life is a miracle.
One of the pieces that's in the first cut is the money map of the world. On the map of the world, it is like every country who has a banknote is on the map. The money map of the world isn't like a political map which shows all the individual countries, because the money map of the world shows countries that aren't shown on a political map. And also you see kind of economic alliances, so like you'll see the euro, so you won't see France, Germany, Spain, the rest of it individually, you'll see them as a group under the euro. And similarly in Africa, there's like West African states and Central African states, and so it makes the world look like a different place.
I don't usually start with an actual medium, painters will always start with paint, people who work in stone will always start with stone, whereas for me the first thing is always the idea. A lot of my ideas come from books, but that doesn't necessarily mean I always use books to make the work.
They come about from like reading the newspapers and what's going on in the world, and what you hear on the radio.
I like to go for walks and observe nature and just look at sort of the patterns and forms that are in nature.
I'm a classic advocate of the art school teacher that told you that you must always keep sketchbooks, you must always make notes. And for me that is very much a lot of my work. I collate ideas, I put them down and I plan them. I plan them in books until eventually I'm ready to make a piece from it. Make sure that you're always working. It's something that you are, it's not something that you do. And that's what it has to reflect. You're not going to work and just turn up and make some art. You don't make art, nobody makes art. You do this thing because you have to do it.